Hey everyone, I'm Cassandra from Homeschool Peace. Today I'm talking all about Sonlight P4/5. So this is Sonlight's pre-K level that they have that you can really use for ages say 4 to 5, even up to 6 if you were say grouping a bunch of kids together. And so I'm using it now this year for my 2 younger students. So one is in kindergarten, one is in pre-K, so I'm teaching them together. And so I wanted to take some time, share some of the books, what works for us, how it works teaching 2 kids at the same time in the same core, as well as some views of the inside of the instructional manual. So if you have some kids around that age and you're looking into Sonlight, hopefully this video will give you some tips and ideas of what's included within Sonlight P4/5. All right, so the first question you might have is, what is Sonlight? You know, when you are trying to select curriculum for your home, there is so many different options out there. And Sonlight is a literature-based company, so their curriculum has a lot of books, a lot of stories and reading. So the idea would be, instead of having a curriculum, it would have an English book with literature that you're supposed to read to your children, and then maybe a history or social studies book, and you read that to your kids or with your kids. Instead, what Sonlight does is they go out and they select amazing stories that are appropriate for whatever level your child is in, as well as whatever sort of time period or your, part of history that you're learning about. And they pull all those stories together. And so then when you are reading these great books to your kids, there's times in the instructional manual that will have you stop, maybe find the place on the map, or maybe look at it in a timeline and be able to see, like, where does this fall in, in our timeline of history, as well as really vocabulary words and, comprehension questions. Are they really understanding what you're reading? So Sonlight really takes those stories. I like it because it takes a character or maybe a place in history, sort of brings it alive when, you're reading to your student about a specific person, or even if it is a fictional character, but you're reading about a place that was a real place and a time that was a real time. You can it helps them relate a little bit more to history. I enjoy reading to my kids, and I love sort of sitting there with the blankets and cuddling, and my kids love hearing stories. So if your kids also just love hearing stories and you love to read, Sonlight is such an amazing program for that. And then the book library that you'll gain from it is amazing. So now taking a look at that P4/5 level, the books that I have in front of me right now are what's included as part of the level that I have. And, Sonlight occasionally will swap out a book here or there. Maybe if a book is out of print, they'll switch it out. So if you go to Sonlight's website, which I do have the link below, you might notice that what I have might be a little bit different, but it's pretty close to what's currently there for their pre-K level. What I love looking first at is in the instructional manual, the book list. By looking at the book list, you can get a really good feel of what's included within this level. You can see there's a Bible section, read alouds, the readiness skills, language arts, science, and world culture. And so within this level, you can see that world cultures and science is included. So if you are curious, if I did this for pre-K, do I need to add anything for science? You don't. It's included right here, and it's very appropriate for that level. As well as you can see a section for language arts. I would say the language arts in here is definitely for pre-K. If you plan to use this for more of a kindergarten level student, you might want to add in some additional reading or another supplemental language arts program if you think that you really want to start reading with your student. They start right around week 10. They do a letter of the week and they focus on that letter. You listen for that sound, practice the sound. You've used this first 1,000 words book as well as the Dr. Seuss ABC book, really listening for that sound. That's really the main section of the language arts at this level, and so you can decide if you really would like to add anything more to that. Also included is this sort of great section of those read alouds, the literature books. I love watching my students in this level because they'll move from having to see a lot of pictures and needing to see the pages while I'm reading to then in the middle of the year I realize that they can sit there and listen to these stories longer, and then through the end of the year I realize that now they can sit there and just listen to me read chapter books, and they don't need to see the pictures. They don't even have to be sitting beside me. They might be down on the floor building with Legos, and they're able just to listen to the stories. And I love watching my kids make that transition. So maybe early on, some of the books that you might be reading from is like the Lion Story Teller bedtime book. You might be reading from the Stories Around the World book, which do have some pictures mixed in with those. And then you'll be moving into things like Uncle Wiggily and Millie Molly Mandy, which are great chapter books that have a few pictures mixed in here and there, but not as many as maybe some of the other books. And I love seeing that that transition. And you do have some rhyming books with the Mother Goose rhymes, as well as the Eric Carle Animals books, and so those are mixed in, as well as an art book, which is really great. I love having the art added in there too. So this is really a great section of books that you're just going to be reading aloud in more of that literature section. I mentioned readiness skills, and they use these workbooks called the Developing the Early Learner books. There is 4 workbooks as part of this. This is a consumable, so you would need to purchase as your kid's going to write on it, and then obviously if you're going to do this again with another student, you would need to purchase these again. I'm going to admit, when I first got these for my son when he was doing this level, it took me a little bit to get used to them. Sort of the pictures and the information included in the workbook is sort of different than what I have used in other workbooks. When I also looked at the price of these, I also wondered, could I just pick up a dollar store workbook? Would it work the same? I'm glad I didn't. I really enjoy these workbooks, and they have grown on me. I love them. The material in there are things that sometimes I don't think to practice with my kids. There are things like some puzzles, and maybe it's memory things, like you have your kid memorize a bunch of things in the workbook page, wait a minute, and then have to come back and circle them. So different things that maybe I forget to practice with my kids, which is perfect for pre-K and kindergarten. So I really love these books. So make sure that you do use these ones and try to move through them, and they have scheduled out exactly what pages you're supposed to do every single day. They were a great addition. We already mentioned the language arts, so moving on to the world cultures. They do have a world cultures section, which I really enjoyed. They have a few books. This one we really liked was the Then and Now, which was almost like an intro kind of history book, which I liked it, comparing, what's the difference between what things are like now versus what were things like then. There's a great book called The Things That People Do. This book follows a town and the people who live in the town and the different jobs they do. My kids really enjoyed this book. Additionally, they do have some missionary stories. The 3 missionary stories they have in the world culture section is The Gods Must Be Angry, New Toes for Tia, and the stories from Africa. At first, I have to say that these books were a little challenging to introduce to my son. So this when he was first doing this level. I hadn't really talked much about other places around the world or how other missionary families live, and if you have a child who's a little sensitive, maybe talking about a child who's sick or hurt might be hard for them. So if you think you have a sensitive child, I would recommend maybe reading these 3 books ahead of time or peeking through them before you read them. Now that I have read it to my son and now reading these now again with my daughters, I realize that I love them. I think they are great because they do introduce the world to your kids, that not everyone lives the way we do, and taking the time to pray for missionaries and talk about missionary families, and even just the stories from Africa, just talking about different places in Africa and how they live differently than we do. So I really do like these books. I just want to say that it might be something you might want to peek at before you jump into them. The last section that we have is the science section, and they have some amazing science books, really great and appropriate for kids in their pre-K or kindergarten age. You have How to Dig a Hole to the Other Side of the World, How to Lift a Lion, What's Under the Sea, Why Do Tigers Have Stripes. This book was amazing. This is the Bearstein Bears Big Book of Science and Nature. This one my kids really loved going through. What I liked is maybe it's the Bearstein Bears are planning a science fair and they're talking about solid, liquid, and gas. Well, then the instructional manual, it gave me as the parent things like, hey, pull out some ice, pull out some water, do an experiment with solid, liquid, and gas. So it's real simple, basic pre-K kindergarten science level things, but activities that tied together with this book, or really any of these science books. And that's what I liked. And it wasn't like every single day, but it popped out throughout the weeks that you had activities that you did related to science. And I did really enjoy the science as part of it. And the last one is the Bible. There is a small Bible book called 100 Favorite Stories of the Bible. My kids really enjoy this Bible book. We read it at breakfast time. It has a short story that they read, as well as a picture for every Bible story. It has 3 comprehension questions that you ask your kids at the end, and I do really enjoy it. The last thing that you'll see when I ever actually get into the instructional manual is there is a memory verse they have your kids memorize every week. For my son, I did have him memorize the Sonlight Bible verse they had in there, the one that they recommended that you memorize. Now with my daughters, I do, and if you watch any of my other videos, I do really enjoy Seeds Family Worship. The songs are really catchy and my kids really enjoy them. So I have to say that I haven't really used the memory verses in the Sonlight P4/5 this time through. Instead, I've been picking my own Bible verse through Seeds Family Worship every week, but there's nothing wrong with the Bible verses that they select here. So if that's something you want to do, obviously keep with what's listed here, but obviously Seeds Family Worship is a great option as well. So now I'm going to take a moment and go into the actual instructional guide just so you can get a feel for the layout of what the material looks like for a week. So taking a look at the week here, you can see up at the top, I have some things covered up just for copyright purposes, but it would have what week it actually is, the days, because each day is numbered that you would go through, as well as which books that you are going to be reading. And you can see here, as I mentioned, there's that Bible verse. You can see the pay attention, my child, to what I say, listen carefully from Proverbs 4:20. Also has which stories to read from your Bible book every single day. And then going through in the read alouds, you'll get an idea for which books you can pull. So normally I take a look at this and then I'll go and pull the books that I know that I'm going to be reading, and then we'll sit down and read from there. And then you have their readiness skills, which is the workbook. So it's just saying which pages to work on. So some days there's like 2 pages, some days it's 1. And then you have your science, which science books they want you to look at or read, as well as the world cultures. And then on the other section, other, they'll have some fun activities added here. They also always have a song, and I love that for this level because sometimes I forget to add music in. So this is a great thing to add there. So now just flipping the page, so now I know which books I'm going to read if I was on a particular day. Say if it was day 1, I would then flip to the page where it shows me day 1. And you can see here's where they have parent information for what you are going to be either memorizing or reading. It gives some tips for you, as well as it goes through for the read aloud sections for this Lion Storyteller bedtime book. The story they had you read for that day had an extra activity in it. You'll see this throughout the instructional manual, just fun activities, things that you can decide to do and add as part of your day. You'll also see the readiness skills, that would be that workbook, science, reading the science, as well as the song as well. And so for that week, I would just go every day going through the next page and reading through and doing the activities, whatever's included, and I track that through as I go through those 36 tabs, the 180 days going through the program. And so that is what is included as in P4/5. I hope this was helpful going through this P4/5 and seeing these books and the instructional manual. You know, if you have any questions, please leave those questions below. I would love to answer them. And before you leave, don't forget to hit the like button and the subscribe, and I will talk to you soon. Goodbye.